Slowly, then all at once. I don't think that there's a better way to describe exactly what's happening right now with tokenization. We are in a super cycle when it comes back to the tokenization of every single asset. Yes, it's starting out slowly right now, but I do think that 2026 is the year where this really begins to scale. And I think it's because of the names tied back to tokenization of everything. And we'll definitely talk about that. Now, again, this is from Securitize, that's saying slowly then all at once, and that it's a tokenization supercycle. This is the same Securitize that is backed by BlackRock as well as Morgan Stanley. The same Securitize that also partnered up with Ripple back in September. And if we're looking at the quoted tweet here, it is markets. Wall Street broker Bernstein says a tokenization supercycle could drive crypto's next major leg higher in 2026. Reiterating its $150,000 Bitcoin price target as real-world assets move on-chain. Now, I don't know about $150,000 Bitcoin being tied back to tokenization because let's just be honest here, tokenization really isn't happening on Bitcoin. In fact, it's kind of outside of the scope of Bitcoin because of the lack of scalability, the cost per transaction, the time that it takes for those transactions to settle. So, I mainly look at other things outside of Bitcoin whenever we hear the word tokenization. Even Ethereum, right? I think of Ethereum when it comes back to tokenization more than Bitcoin because, Ethereum has been the star of the show when it comes back to tokenization. But even if we think about XRP, we've been noticing XRP rising in value. Right now, currently, there's over $700 million tied back to the XRP ledger in tokenized value. Now, we do have distributed asset value as well as represented asset value. Now, I mainly look at this value more than the represented value because the represented value is essentially the XRP ledger becoming a bookkeeper, if you will, for those assets. But, we're still starting to see a lot more tokenization happening on the XRP ledger, which I'm happy about because, again, we're up 113% when it comes back to the represented asset value. Now, stablecoin market cap also up 20+%. I mean, all in all, we are roughly over $1 billion in just assets on chain for the XRP ledger, which is extremely exciting. Now, also stablecoin 30-day transfer volume up over 45% at $815 million. We just love to see it. There's been so much growth happening here for the XRP ledger, and I think that a lot of people are just overlooking what's really happening here. But I'm very excited about all of this. Again, we're starting to see a lot more growth happening in this space, and it's all based around a lot of these utility-based networks, like, of course, the XRP ledger. Now, beyond this, tokenization as a whole, we just hit about $20+ billion, nearly 21 billion. Represented value, obviously, over 376 billion. That's all tied back to Canton, which, by the way, Canton is a very good asset to be holding in this space as well. I know that a lot of people have been asking me about it. I just have yet to get time to record a video on it. I do hold CC, aka Canton. But regarding the entire market, we're still very early in the stages of tokenization. Guys, I have to interrupt the video because we have a serious problem right now in crypto, and that is data breaches coming from Ledger. That's right, the cold storage device creator, Ledger. This is unacceptable. I've talked about this in the past as well because this is a very common theme with Ledger. It's been happening for years and years and years now. This is also why I promote iTrust Capital. iTrust Capital obviously is an affiliate of the channel. They are a sponsor of the channel as well. Yes, I do make money from iTrust Capital. I'm very transparent about that. However, I also did research on iTrust Capital for years. I've utilized iTrust Capital for years. I've followed iTrust Capital for years. This is a platform that I trust, that I have utilized, that I love their products, especially the premium custody account, because it allows me to sleep at night with zero concern about my digital assets because it's a fully closed loop system. Not to mention, they have partnerships with Coinbase Asset Management, Fidelity Digital Assets, and even Wells Fargo and Fireblocks. This is one of the best platforms to custody your assets. Obviously, if you want to have full control of your keys, then hey, Decent Wallet is very good as well. But this is a fully closed loop institutional grade custody platform that I personally think is one of the best, especially to get away from things like this. So if you guys do want to sign up, there's going to be a link down in the description below as well as in the comments below. And let's jump back on into the video, especially if we are thinking about a super cycle beginning. Now, addressing the super cycle and addressing tokenization itself, Bitwise put out a great post regarding just how fast tokenization is moving. We have here tokenized real world assets were virtually non-existent in 2020. In 2022, they hit a $1 billion market cap. In 2024, they hit $2 billion. And then by January of this year, we hit $20 billion. That's crazy. It took 2 years to double initially, and then it took 2 years for us to 10x. That's how fast tokenization moves. Just imagine where we will be at in 2 years from now, right? That's going to be 2028. We most likely have full-on regulatory clarity for the space. I mean, just imagine how crazy this could be. And talking about how crazy it could be, we have over here from RWA watch list, just in, Presto Research crypto analytics platform predicts tokenization hitting $490 billion by the end of this year. So let's go back to that real quick. So it doubles in value from 2022 to 2024. So it just adds $1 billion to the market. Then in 2 years later, we add an $18 billion value to the tokenization market. We're at $20 billion right now. They're expecting $470 billion to be added to the tokenization market within the next 11 months. Think about how crazy that is. This is driven by tokenized US treasuries and credit instruments moving on-chain. This is how trillions eventually gets tokenized. Now, if we are thinking about that, that is roughly well over a 20x from where we are at right now in terms of the full value on chain. If we start to see tokenization move this fast, it's going to affect the market in a big way. Because we're starting to look at this value, and if it's going to grow at this rate, by the end of 2027, we could be well over $5 trillion. I mean, that's how fast tokenization could grow if this growth rate continues. And if we actually see 490 billion by the end of this year, yeah, it's going to spread quick. But this would confirm the super cycle. Now, I would say that this is ridiculous if we didn't have names like the DTCC now beginning to tokenize. They move quadrillions of dollars per year, and we already know that the head of digital assets at the DTCC said $100 trillion in, I think it was like 52 weeks or something like that. If that's the case, we're going to start to see them scale their tokenization operations quick, very quick. So with these types of names, yeah, we definitely could start to see trillions of dollars moving on chain. Now, you probably read the title of this video, and you're probably thinking, well, Nick, where's the Swift announcement? Well, Swift did confirm exactly what's coming. They did. They did with this post here from January 9th. What is tokenization and why does it matter? This is the global head of transaction banking at Standard Chartered Bank. By the way, same individual. Let's go back real quick to my profile because I just want to show you guys this. This is the same individual from that breakdown of ISO 20022. Same individual that said that they include Circle's USDC and Ripple's XRP. Because what he was saying that we see a very large number of payment service providers native on ISO 20022 and also quite a lot of coin providers. We could use ISO 20022 to bridge between traditional and decentralized finance. Yeah. Naming Ripple and XRP and addressing how ISO 20022 works and how this could accelerate the adoption of these new technologies as well. Because when you have that combination of ISO 20022 and these new technologies, well, all of a sudden you see this new world of finance become a reality. But also, let's not forget how big Standard Chartered is in the Ripple ecosystem. One of the first Ripple investors. They're still working with Ripple on Ripple custody. Yeah, they're still a big player. Tokenization is no longer experimental, and Swift's role is to help the industry connect tokenized networks in the same way it connected fiat payment rails safely, securely, and at scale. By linking tokenized assets across networks and jurisdictions, the industry can better support trade, payments, and economic growth worldwide. This is not just about technology, it's about enabling finance to move at the speed modern economies demand. And here we have that video clip. Listen closely to this video.
Clients are increasingly looking at a world where they want not only to see data, but also assets and therefore value move instantly. And that's currently not the case. And in emerging markets, in fast-growing markets, the demand for always on is accelerating, and they're looking at reliable services. And tokenization is actually bringing a reliable service, actually brings innovation to the market that we can then bring to our clients. In my mind, the landscape of finance or digital finance is at a tipping point. So tokenization and digital assets are about to move from pilot into mainstream.
They're now about to move from pilots into mainstream. This is where we start to see the big shift. We're seeing clear confirmation of what's coming at a time where retail is so fixated on the price chart that they're going to shake themselves out. I hate to say that, but I'm noticing more and more frustration, and I get it. I understand it. But guys, now is not the time to get shaken out. Now is the time to lock in even more than ever before. We just heard from Brian Armstrong as well from Coinbase. Tokenized stocks will be huge. So many opportunities. Vastly increases access globally. Great for public companies. Fractional purchasing of stocks. 24/7 trading. Perpetual futures. Real-time settlement. Novel governance innovations. Everything. Literally everything of value will move on chain because of a lot of these major efficiencies tied back to tokenization. Listen closely.
A few years ago, people were talking about stablecoins, and they were saying, well, why do we need a digital dollar? We kind of already can make digital payments. And this is just like a dollar sitting in a bank account. We're going to make a digital token of it. What's the point of that? It turned out it's a massive market. There's high demand for the dollar in all these countries around the world. And a lot of people in the world can't get access to dollar denominated accounts. They live in a high inflation country like, Turkey or Argentina or Nigeria. So that was one piece. And then the other was it just reduced friction in terms of like all kinds of payments people wanted to make in crypto for trading and, overseas B2B payments. And now these things are all there was something like $30 trillion of stablecoin payment volume in the last year. We think the same thing could happen in stocks. We don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but if you simply, you're storing a share of a company in like a traditional custodian, you issue a token equivalent of it on chain. What does that enable? So similarly to stablecoins, there's an international component to this. There's lots of people in the world who would love to buy Tesla or Nvidia or whatever, and they, if you're wealthy in Argentina, you can probably get a brokerage account open somewhere to trade that kind of stuff. But the vast majority of people cannot. There's also this 24/7 trading aspect. So people want to do that. And I think crypto is going to just get there faster, right? There's fractional shares where you can trade like a tiny piece of a share. There's things like perpetual futures markets, which have done really well in crypto. And why shouldn't that exist for securities as well? So I think you're going to see some things like this where it's just crypto kind of reduces friction. It allows people to try new things. There might even be kind of novel governance things which get created. Like let's say that you want to create a stock where, short-term holders of your stock can't vote. You need to have held the stock for at least a year to vote. I mean, you could program that into a smart contract on chain and make that new type of token with those capabilities. So we don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but I feel like it's definitely worth trying.
And listen, we're still in the early stages of all of this, but the main thing that we are focused on is that, we're seeing some of the biggest shifts happening here. I mean, think about the companies that got announced in 2025 that were starting to tokenize. And I'm not even mentioning the ones that were already there. Swift came out and talked about tokenization at scale. The DTCC came out and, started talking about tokenization at scale. BNY Mellon, all of these big banks, we're still at just the beginning phase because just like you heard in this video clip from Swift, we're just about to move from the pilot stage into mainstream. We're going live this year with major tokenization initiatives. And what's crazy about that is we go back to these predictions. If just one of these players start to tokenize this year, we could easily hit $490 billion. We got to think about how many assets some of these names hold. Like if we're going back to the list over here and we just go to institutional funds, right? Now, obviously, BlackRock is not tokenizing all of their assets in, their, system. However, you know, we know BlackRock has their fund tokenized on chain. BlackRock holds well over $10+ trillion in assets under management. Some of these other funds hold trillions of dollars as well. Franklin Templeton has well over $1 trillion plus. Like, all it really takes is one of these players to really tokenize aggressively for us to hit $490 billion. Like, this is a very small, like, I know that this sounds crazy when we are looking at the market and the market is valued at $20 billion. And we're looking at this being like, they're saying that we're going to add $470 billion within 11 months. Yeah, it's 100% possible. When we're talking about hundreds of trillions of dollars, we're talking about a measly $490 billion compared to, you know, I think that the total value that we were looking at, and this goes back like a year ago, it's like $1.7 quadrillion. And that was coming from Archix, you know, their CEO, Graham Rodford. But I think that the total value now has surged significantly. I think that we're closer to like $3+ trillion or quadrillion dollars, because the DTCC, you know, they're moving well over $3+ quadrillion a year just by themselves. The future is extremely bright. And yeah, I do agree that we are in a super cycle. Like, it's starting now. And I would argue that even XRP's, you know, RWA tokenization super cycle has started to begin. We're starting to see a lot more tokenized assets moving onto the XRP ledger. And don't take anything away from some of these other networks as well, because Stellar is hitting, they just hit $1 billion. Stellar did. Stellar's doing incredibly well as well. We need to focus on a lot of these utility networks that are starting to tokenize aggressively, because they are also going to be very large winners. So definitely pay attention to that. And I'm also going to be making a video on Stellar here soon, probably tomorrow. So, you know, stay tuned for that. But with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video.